Emily sneered at me after I announced my resignation, and I responded by maintaining a silent, steady gaze. Our conversation had revolved around the company's decision to cut labor costs, with particular disdain aimed at those supposedly exploiting overtime pay. Tom, too, seemed to relish the notion of trimming expenses. A week later, my phone incessantly rang with calls from the company. Upon answering, the president inquired sharply, "Who exactly are you?" I couldn't help but scoff mockingly at the president's question. In response, I introduced myself as Lily Johnson, a 59-year-old employee with 37 years of dedicated service since my college graduation. I explained our company's role in providing administrative services, particularly catering to busy company presidents handling clerical work. Specializing in tax-related matters, I proudly managed 45 clients, a responsibility that had grown overwhelming despite the assistance of a part-timer. Despite the challenges, I couldn't show any sign of weakness. Our clients were long-standing relationships, and their adversities fueled my determination. Today, as I sat in front of my computer, the relentless harassment from Tom and Emily weighed heavily on my mind. Tom, 7 years my junior and now the head of the tax department, had drastically changed his demeanor 3 months ago upon promotion. His once polite tone was replaced with condescension and complaints, making every interaction a struggle. Even when I countered, he remained unfazed, instructing me to consult the manual for guidance and warning against unnecessary actions. Emily, Tom's assistant, joined in the harassment, criticizing my efficiency and mocking my rank and file status. Despite being the first to decline a promotion to department head, a fact unknown to Tom and Emily, I committed to completing my regular duties. Their harassment persisted, with Tom accusing me of increasing overtime, branding it a waste. Emily echoed his sentiment, sighing as she claimed my constant overtime was dragging down the entire tax department's performance. The recent cause of my overtime was Tom unexpectedly leaving a month's worth of client files on my desk to be filed by the end of the month after work. My face drained of color as I glanced at the files before me. "Wait, these all have deadlines this month, right?" I uttered in confusion. However, before I could grasp the gravity of the situation, Tom was already packing up his desk, completely uninterested in addressing my concerns. "I'm heading out. Take care with that," he casually remarked as he swiftly left the office, leaving me with a pile of urgent tasks. Emily followed suit, adding insult to injury with a mocking laugh. The incredulity of the situation weighed on me, and I sighed heavily as I opened the client files scattered on my desk. To my dismay, some of the files were originally Emily's responsibility. The realization deepened my sigh. I understood why Tom had been subjecting me to relentless harassment. They wanted me to retire quickly. My extensive experience and deeper knowledge in taxation made me a preferred resource for other members of the tax department over Tom. Tom's unapproachable demeanor and unattractive appearance made everyone, except Emily, avoid him. It seemed Emily's proximity to him was strategic, driven by Tom's preference for younger female employees. The shallow nature of their thinking sent a chill down my spine. Emily's harassment was not just a personal vendetta. She aimed to curry favor with Tom, the one evaluating the tax department's performance. Despite these challenges, I had to manage the declarations. Alongside preparing tax declarations for my assigned companies, it seemed today's workload was far from over. However, claiming overtime would only invite complaints from Tom and Emily, leaving me resigned to the prospect of unpaid extra hours. Then, unexpectedly, I received a summons to the president's office. Our company had recently undergone a change in leadership due to the former president's sudden illness. The new president, the former president's son, wasn't fully acquainted with our company. As I entered the office, I noticed Tom and Emily with unpleasant smirks on their faces. In a tense atmosphere, the president dropped a bombshell. "Lily, we'll need you to resign by the end of this month." My mind spun as I asked for clarification. Tom and Emily had apparently accused me of overbilling for overtime, citing that while others had around 15 hours, I had exceeded 80 hours. The president, oblivious to the true circumstances, seemed impressed with Tom and Emily's zero overtime. The reality of the situation hit me. The inflated overtime was a result of doing Tom and Emily's work. However, revealing Tom's instructions would risk portraying it as my own inability to manage time effectively. I presented the facts, asserting that I hadn't overbilled for overtime but struggled to finish my workload within regular hours. The president sighed deeply, expressing doubt but acknowledging the lack of evidence to pursue the matter further. Nevertheless, he insisted that they couldn't retain someone working at such a slow pace. Resigned to the situation, the president suggested my resignation, and it seemed his mind was made up. Told to leave the company I had devoted 37 years to, I felt a weariness settle in. Despite my dedication, the additional workload from Tom and Emily went unappreciated. I agreed to resign at the end of the month, acknowledging that I had already communicated my decision to the president. As I glanced at Tom and Emily, their vulgar smiles reflected satisfaction. Leaving the president's office, Emily taunted me with a sarcastic, "Thanks for quitting," her sneer cutting through. I responded with a silent stare, facing similar disdain from Tom, who shared his approval of cutting labor costs and labeled me as someone exploiting overtime pay. Observing their cheerful conversation, I pondered the handover process. Creating documents for all my clients, I ensured proper farewells and appointments with those I could meet personally. Unable to schedule a meeting with the president, I resorted to letters to inform them of my successor. A week post-resignation, enjoying a moment of relaxation at home, my mobile phone rang. Seeing the company's call, I hesitated, having already completed social insurance procedures. However, persistent calls from both the company and Tom and Emily's personal mobiles led me to answer reluctantly. As I picked up, the president urgently spoke, asking, "Who exactly are you?" I couldn't help but mockingly reply, "Just an unemployed lady who resigned from the company, nothing else." In response, the president urgently explained the chaos since my departure, 49 calls to stop transactions with the company. He pleaded for my immediate return, revealing a sense of panic in his tone. Reluctantly, I rose from my seat and made my way back to the company. Upon my arrival, I found Tom and Emily waiting, their faces notably pallid and dark circles underlining their weary eyes. Surprised by their drastic change in appearance, I inquired about what was happening. Tom glared at me and revealed, "Since you left, we've been bombarded with calls to stop transactions, not just from your clients but also from prospective companies we were planning to introduce." "What did you do?" Emily echoed the suspicion, expressing disillusionment at the thought of me resorting to underhanded tactics. Their haggard appearance suggested the toll handling cancellations. While I had not manipulated the clients, I had a hunch about the reason behind the transaction halts. Considering the inevitability of cancellations, I mumbled my thoughts aloud. Tom, however, accused me outright, insisting I had orchestrated something. He demanded I go to the president's office immediately, forcefully escorting me there. Upon entering the president's office with Tom and Emily, the president greeted me with a direct look in his eyes. Tom declared, "President, I brought her," with an air of authority, while Emily hurriedly followed suit. Ignoring their accusatory tone, the president questioned me about the abrupt halt in transactions after my departure. I took a deep breath and explained, "Our clients don't need us to manage their taxes. There are tax accounting firms that offer cheaper services. They continued with us because of me." Tom snapped back, questioning my self-worth, and Emily taunted me, both challenging my value to the company. Undeterred, I elaborated on my unique approach, offering tailored tax-saving strategies that resonated with our clients. Tom dismissed it as inefficient, arguing that their manual-based operations were more practical. The president sighed deeply, recognizing the fundamental difference in our approaches. In a serious tone, he said, "Actually," signaling a crucial revelation or decision to follow. I received a surprising call from my father, the former president. It turns out that some clients, who had stopped transactions, went directly to Dad to negotiate on my behalf. I hadn't anticipated clients going to such lengths for me. Dad emphasized that the tax department thrived because of my contributions. Not only did I manage my clients efficiently, but I also supported my colleagues' clients, possessing knowledge that even Tom couldn't match. Dad disclosed that if I hadn't declined the promotion, I would have held a higher position than a department head by now. The current president expressed regret with a pained expression. Emily appeared shocked, probably grappling with the idea that I could have been her superior. The president apologized for making me resign initially and asked if I would consider revoking my resignation. According to Dad, I was indispensable to the company. While I appreciated the change in the president's perspective, I hesitated to accept. Tom interrupted our conversation, visibly upset, and protested the president's decision, questioning why I was chosen over him. Emily echoed his sentiments, praising Tom's leadership and expressing disbelief at the preference for me. The president then sternly addressed them, revealing that since my resignation, numerous complaints had been received from the tax department, suggesting they had been shifting their workload onto others. Tom's face turned pale as the president exposed the fact that he had been pushing the preparation of client declaration forms onto subordinates, including Emily's work for multiple clients. The president pointed out the irony, considering Tom had accused me of being a salary thief. Observing Tom and Emily's pale expressions, the president continued by revealing an alleged leak about their romantic involvement. Tom struggled to defend himself, claiming he was merely mentoring Emily as her superior. However, the president produced receipts from the accounting department, indicating dining expenses filed by Tom. Confronted with evidence, Tom, sweating profusely, was unable to provide a convincing explanation. Emily, too, turned ghostly pale as the president accused them of neglecting their duties, inflating expense claims, and violating company policy by having an affair in the office while being married. In a calm and straightforward manner, the president declared the termination of their employment effective immediately. Tom and Emily tried to resist, promising to retract the receipt claims and pleading for their jobs. "I have a family," Tom desperately pleaded, attempting to reverse his termination. Emily echoed his sentiments, tearfully expressing her fear of being fired. She promised to apologize to me and others for burdening them with work, realizing the gravity of the situation involving neglect of duties and an affair with a supervisor. Concerned about her reputation, she implored for a second chance. Sensing their desperation, I offered advice. "Why don't you stop resisting? It's undignified," I suggested. Tom glared at me, retorting, "Shut up. What would a single person like you understand?" I sighed, reminding him, "Tom, you were the one who got me fired. It's just karma. What goes around comes around. Why don't you take some responsibility and reflect a bit?" Frustrated, Tom looked away, while Emily bit her lip in distress. Aware of more details about their misconduct, I turned to the president, asking with a smile if I should share them. Tom and Emily frantically tried to stop me, fearing further exposure. I issued an ultimatum, warning them that wrongdoings would eventually come to light, urging them to face reality before it worsened. At my words, both Tom and Emily collapsed to their knees, and the president decided to fire them on the spot. Later, I revealed more about their misdeeds, including Tom faking business trips to spend days with Emily and their insidious tactics of harassing disliked employees into quitting. Despite my attempts to help those employees, Tom and Emily's strategies were relentless. They repeatedly reprimanded and pressured employees out of my sight, often assigning sudden tasks with tight deadlines. The resigned employees had initially asked me to keep quiet, but since they were now happily working elsewhere, I decided it was time to speak up. The president, furious at my revelations, expressed anger about cutting Tom and Emily's final salary. He planned to thoroughly investigate past inflated expense claims. Tom, with tears in his eyes, begged the president not to cut his salary, fearing the impact on his family. As the truth unraveled, Tom's affair with Emily came to light, leading to Tom's divorce. The two now face claims for compensation in the divorce lawsuit, marking the consequential aftermath of their actions. I became aware of the situation when Tom reached out to me, seeking assistance in persuading the president to reconsider their firing. Emily and Tom found themselves in dire straits. Despite their efforts, they struggled to secure new jobs in the tax industry. The industry's close-knit nature meant that word of their misdeeds spread rapidly, making potential employers hesitant to hire them. Desperate for income to cover divorce compensation and living expenses, they resorted to day labor at construction sites, a stark departure from their previous office roles. Emily would often call me in tears, pleading for help. "Lily, please help. I only wanted a better life, and I never truly liked Tom," she'd cry. However, I couldn't ignore the fact that their predicament was a consequence of their own actions. Many, including myself, had been impacted by their behavior. I reminded Emily that the consequences were a result of her choices. "You can't unring a bell," I told her firmly. Facing hardships was the consequence of her decisions. Emily's despair echoed through her protests. Despite her regrets, the outcome remained unchanged. As for me, I chose to distance myself from the chaos of the corporate world. Despite the president's pleas for my return, I declined. Once told to resign, I had no desire to return. Instead, I found solace in assisting at a friend's tax office, supplementing my income and enjoying a more relaxed lifestyle. In the future, I entertained the idea of starting my own office, where I could serve my clients without the constraints of corporate bureaucracy. In my own space, I could fully dedicate myself to my clients' needs. As a tax accountant, I aspired to be on equal footing with my clients, providing service without superiority. This marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one filled with excitement and opportunities to pursue what truly mattered to me. My second life had just begun, and I eagerly anticipated the journey ahead. A factory worker father hurriedly excused himself upon her announcement. As soon as she uttered those words, my stepmother, with a wicked grin, impulsively splashed tea onto my dad's face. Beside her, she burst into laughter. Surprisingly, my stepfather made no effort to reprimand her. The stain on the suit my dad had meticulously cleaned for this occasion rapidly expanded. Fortunately, the tea was lukewarm, nearly cold, alleviating concerns about burns. Amidst my astonishment, I handed a napkin to my dad while Tom, in a panic, tried to dry his father-in-law's suit. Even in the midst of worrying about potential injuries, Tom couldn't help but laugh at the absurd behavior of his parents. Throughout this chaos, my dad remained silent, stood upright, and pointed at them, declaring, "Well then, I'll just ruin your company." The unfamiliar sternness in his voice caught me off guard. He took my hand, and we left the chaotic scene behind. Tom scolded his parents before quickly joining us. "I'm really sorry, father-in-law. I'll make my parents apologize later." He apologized, but my dad, with a grave tone, reassured him, "No need. We're done with them anyway." He patted Tom's shoulder as we walked away from the tumultuous O'Connor household. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Yvonne Warner, a 26-year-old office worker. Raised by my single father after losing my mother at a young age, I admired his dedication to both work and family. My father, in charge of a factory, managed to attend all my school events, even if he had to rush back to work afterward. In college, I met Tom, 2 years my senior, who was gentle, sincere, and polite. Despite his popularity, he accepted my confession, but there were concerns about his relationship with his parents, which he didn't elaborate on. We continued to date, and although Tom lived alone, he occasionally visited his parents, always looking exhausted afterward. Tom prioritized me in our relationship, and I was proud of him. I wanted to introduce him to my dad, and when the day finally came, it was a mix of fear and excitement. Surprisingly, my dad and Tom got along well, and I felt relieved to see the two important men in my life getting along. Yet Tom's odd excitement after the meeting left me puzzled, and he evaded any further questions about it. As Tom and I had seemingly hit it off with my dad, I couldn't shake off a growing worry that perhaps Tom's feelings were not as positive as he claimed. This anxiety lingered, leading Tom to request an important conversation a few days later. Nervously anticipating the discussion about our recent encounter with my dad, I met Tom at the agreed-upon cafe. Upon reaching the cafe, I noticed Tom already seated, his face wearing a gloomy expression visible through the glass. Suppressing my own anxiety, I approached him with a cheerful greeting.
Tom, sorry, did you wait long? I softly spoke as I reached him. Startled by my touch on his shoulder, Tom exclaimed, "Whoa, Yvonne, you scared me." After a deep breath, he continued, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. Please, have a seat." Sitting across from Tom, I ordered from the waiter, my concern mounting as Tom's downcast expression persisted. Hoping to encourage him to share his thoughts, I spoke up, "Hey, Tom, what's bothering you so much? Is there something wrong with my dad?" Tom, taken aback by the direct question, denied any issue with my dad, stating, "Absolutely not. I respect your dad. It's just that my. He trailed off, avoiding eye contact. Sensing the need to delve deeper, I sighed and pressed him. "If you're worried about something, I want to know what's on your mind." Tom took a deep breath, as if preparing himself, and began to disclose a shocking revelation. According to him, his parents were judgmental and lacked class, constantly interfering in his life. When he introduced a girlfriend, his parents would criticize her on the spot, leading to tearful breakups. Tom desired to marry me but was troubled by the prospect of involving his parents in our marriage. Assuring him that we didn't have to include them in our union, I suggested enduring their presence during the wedding formalities. Reminding him that my dad liked him, I thought the matter was settled, but Tom had more to share. He revealed that when he met my dad, he was surprised by the stark contrast to his own parents. Expressing a desire to become the son of such a great man, Tom shared his dilemma about marriage. While he was pleased that my dad liked him, he couldn't decide whether his parents should also become his in-laws. Tom brightened momentarily but sighed deeply afterward. In a moment of realization, Tom looked up and apologized. He proposed a unique solution. When we meet his parents for our marriage, could my dad come along? Tom hoped that the presence of someone so respectable might eventually influence his parents positively. I agreed to discuss it with my dad, but I couldn't help expressing my wish that Tom had approached the conversation differently. Understanding his misstep, Tom quickly apologized and then, with newfound determination, formally proposed marriage to me. Swiftly deciding to discuss the matter with my father, who was initially hesitant, I approached him with Tom when he formally asked for my hand in marriage. After obtaining my father's agreement, Tom and I arranged a date to meet his parents. On the appointed day, dressed in our best attire, we stood at the front door of Tom's family home, preparing to meet his parents for the first time. Given the unsettling stories I had heard about Tom's parents, my nerves were understandably on edge. My father, attempting to lighten the mood, encouraged us not to be too tense, assuring that Tom's parents were just overly concerned. His supportive pat on the back eased my anxiety slightly. When Tom rang the doorbell, there was no response, causing a momentary panic. Tom rang again, but still there was silence. Not wanting to create a bad impression, Tom excused himself and entered the house first, leaving my father and me exchanging concerned glances. After what seemed like an eternity, Tom reappeared, looking flustered. Before I could inquire about the delay, he made excuses with a forced smile, promising us they would be ready soon. My father sighed in exasperation, and I couldn't shake the growing worry that this incident might jeopardize our wedding plans. Finally, Tom ushered us inside, where his parents awaited us. However, their demeanor was peculiar. His mother greeted us with a sly grin, while his father seemed disinterested, looking away. Despite the tense atmosphere, I decided to proceed with the introductions. Tom, regaining composure, introduced both my parents and me. Despite the warmth of his thoughtful introduction, his parents sneered, and the atmosphere remained strained. In an awkward turn of events, Tom's mother splashed tea on my father, staining the suit he had meticulously cleaned for the occasion. Shocked, I offered my dad a handkerchief while Tom panickedly tried to wipe off the tea stains. His parents, laughing in response, only fueled Tom's anger. My father, standing up, pointed at them and declared, "Then I'll ruin your company," a tone and statement I had never heard from him before. Taking my hand, he left the house, leaving Tom's parents in the wake of Tom's scolding. Returning to our house with Tom, my father changed clothes, and Tom earnestly apologized for the incident. I could hear my dad's troubled voice during their conversation. Although I was shocked by Tom's parents' actions, I knew they wouldn't be easy to get along with. Seated on the living room sofa, clenching my fists, I replayed the event in my mind, seething at the insult directed at my dad. When my dad and Tom finished changing, Tom immediately apologized to me, almost bowing down, expressing regret for not anticipating such behavior from his parents. His sincerity was evident, and he didn't even ask for forgiveness. Feeling the need to apologize as well, I took Tom's hand as he kneeled on the floor, expressing my regret for suggesting the meeting without fully understanding the situation. Unexpectedly, the situation took a serious turn, and I felt compelled to apologize to my father for the unintended consequences of my thoughtless suggestion. His troubled expression and shrugged shoulders conveyed the difficulty in addressing the situation. Determined to understand the gravity of my dad's threat, I sought clarification. Dad, was what you said true? Are you really going to ruin their company? To my question, my dad glanced at Tom and nodded firmly, affirming his intent. My father, the CEO of a renowned local enterprise, revealed that their business was already struggling. As the factory manager and CEO, he had started as a worker in the very factory, sacrificing his dream of becoming a painter to raise me alone after my mother's passing. He worked tirelessly and climbed the corporate ladder through several promotions. Eventually, he took over as the CEO when the former CEO retired. During our recent visit to Tom's family home, we discovered that one of the subsidiaries managed by Tom's father, my father-in-law, belonged to my dad's company. Unfortunately, Tom's parents' prejudices and Tom's mother's premature actions prevented this from being clarified, leading to the present situation. My father explained that his company faced management difficulties, contemplating downsizing without resorting to layoffs. Regret was evident in his words as he considered the impact on his employees. After Tom's serious conversation with my father, he proposed closing down the subsidiary where Tom's parents worked. Concerned about the consequences for Tom's parents, my father questioned if Tom was okay with it. Tom, resolute and having cut ties with his parents, expressed a desire for them to reflect on their actions. Despite the difficulty, he requested permission to get engaged with me. Moved by Tom's earnestness, I also pleaded with my father to allow our engagement. My father, crossing his arms, pondered Tom's words. Despite the recent incident, he eventually gave his approval, setting a condition related to Tom's parents being company executives. My father demanded to know Tom's plan for the employees and made it clear that our marriage would be off if Tom couldn't handle this responsibly. A few days later, Tom presented a plan to my father for his father's company's employees. He had arranged a meeting with my father to discuss possible job placements for all the employees. Tom showed genuine concern for their transition and offered to work for free until they were settled and producing results. He expressed his eagerness to compensate for any shortcomings with his work and salary, and once settled, to re-engage with me. Tom, demonstrating his earnestness, saw himself as partly responsible for his company's collapse and wished to be a positive force in the situation. Upon returning home, I discovered that our marriage would be delayed due to an unavoidable circumstance. When I greeted my father, he expressed, "Welcome back, Ivan. You heard right. I'm sorry for deciding such an important thing on my own, but I thought it wouldn't be fair if I were the only one happy." While he apologized, I seized the opportunity to propose working in the company with Tom, offering to work for free. I insisted that my father should accept Tom's proposal. Despite Tom's attempts to dissuade me, I desperately begged my father, who initially remained silent. After repeated pleas, he uncrossed his arms and quietly nodded. Meanwhile, Tom's parents had yet to apologize. My father seemed to have been waiting for them, but the time had passed. He began preparations to take over Tom's father's company. Time passed, and the day arrived when the company collapsed. Tom's parents summoned us to their home, where a crowd of former employees protested the company's closure. They accused us of being the root of all evil and blamed me for seducing Tom and ingratiating myself with my father. Despite the accusations, Tom attempted to calm the former employees, explaining the situation and offering new job placements. Ignoring his parents' outbursts, Tom apologized for the inconvenience caused and promised to work with dedication. The former employees, reassured by Tom's efforts, began leaving, relieved and grateful. As they departed, my father promised to inform them of the details later. In the aftermath, Tom's parents continued to fuss about their predicament. Tom sighed in exasperation at their blame shifting, expressing concern about losing their house used as collateral. Despite their pleas, Tom's parents were met with indifference as the former employees had already heard the truth from Tom and disregarded the parents' desperate appeals. My father also ignored their words, and the former employees left relieved, leaving Tom's parents to confront the consequences of their actions. "I don't care what you think. You got what you deserved, so it can't be helped. Why don't you learn a little remorse?" My father reprimanded Tom's parents, who seemed oblivious to our scolding. Unable to bear their persistence any longer, I finally lost my patience. "Haven't you just caused trouble for Tom all this time, boasting about being business owners and only caring about titles? Isn't that why this happened?" My words left his parents speechless, seemingly ready to retort, but halted by my father's decisive intervention. He made it clear that he wouldn't allow them to speak further. A business owner is supposed to take responsibility. You should at least complete your final task properly. Left without a response, Tom's parents were scolded collectively and could say nothing more. Leaving them behind, we left the scene. And eventually, Tom's parents lost everything: the company, the house, and the land. They never provided any guarantees to the former employees and evaded responsibility. After losing everything, they reached out to Tom for help. But having cut ties with them, Tom coldly turned them away. Now, they were probably in jail, and we heard nothing from them since. Even if they got out, they still had a debt to the former employees, so the situation remained dire. Afterward, Tom and I quit our jobs and joined my father's company. Living off our savings in the first month, we worked for free as promised. One day, we encountered a former employee of Tom's parents' company at work. Eager to shake our hands at the new workplace, the employee expressed their gratitude to my father for giving them a chance. Thanks to Tom for arranging the job, and also conveyed many thanks to me. Despite not remembering the specific incident, I had apparently helped that person carry materials. After expressing immense gratitude, the former employee left, expressing a desire to keep working hard. Feeling somewhat redeemed by his words, we hurried to my father's office, where he warmly welcomed us. Handing us several thick envelopes, he explained, "It's your salaries for the past months." It ended up being multiple envelopes because it couldn't all fit into one. We were stunned, unable to swallow the situation, but my father continued, "Your hard work revitalized the team. They constantly expressed their gratitude and concern for you. I couldn't possibly leave such excellent employees unpaid, and our performance has improved significantly. Thank you truly." Hearing this, we hugged each other and cried, moved by the concern shown for us. My father then added something even more wonderful. "Tom, I'm impressed with your leadership. If you're okay with my daughter, would you marry her?" Overjoyed, Tom replied tearfully, bowing to me and my father. I hugged Tom, crying alongside him, and so we got married. Continuing to work at my father's company, we lived happily every day, gradually becoming more adept at our jobs and contributing more effectively. Our time at the company was approaching a pause as I was about to take maternity leave. My father, Tom, our colleagues, and I were all looking forward to the arrival of our child.